basically. All right. I think we are back, gentlemen.
How y'all
Gentlemen,
doing?
gentlemen, y'all know what it is. Cornbread
Yeah.
Vodcast. We are back. Season 3, episode 6. And this is a
Jesus.
special episode, man. First and foremost, how you guys doing today?
Doing good, bro.
Doing all right, brother. You doing good?
Man, I'm
You good?
blessed. Blessed. It's June. Juneteenth is approaching. I am blessed. I am here. I am free. We won't get into some of that, but yeah, man. How y'all? Y'all all right?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah, yeah.
Doing
You
good.
got this mischievous look on your face, brother. What's going
No,
on in your mind?
I'm really on fumes because I don't think we really when I say free, we can tie anything to that piece. But I think the topic today is, make Juneteenth matter. And Juneteenth has mattered for a long time, but I think we as a culture are still kind of getting into it. And so I thought it'd be cool to actually bring this to our platform because, we are 3 Black men, 3 African-American Black men, 3 freed men, by society's rights, if you will. And, we are the product of even the delayed acknowledgement of it, yet still here we are. So, that's what I wanted to kind of get into tonight. But before we do anything, I wanted to say, if you are checking in and tuning with us tonight, thank you. As always, please follow us on Instagram at Eat More Cornbread, Facebook at Eat More Cornbread. Definitely check us out on our website at www.eatmorecornbread.com. Leave us an email to give your feedback at thatgoodcornbread@gmail.com. You can still reach us anytime, any place. And again, we just appreciate you for tuning in. So I want to kind of get right into it. I think Juneteenth, it's approaching, this week. And I feel like it was only right to bring this conversation to the platform, primarily because, again, we are in the age of information, one, and through technology. I know the folks are like, you guys are back separate. So we are taking advantage of technology by being adherence to our travel schedules and so forth, and just making this conversation still happen this week. So yeah, don't freak out. These still my brothers. We still together. We just on Zoom this week. But wanted to have the conversation and bring it to my fellas in reference to our thoughts around the impact of Juneteenth. Giving a little bit of history of it as well for those that might not know the basic of the holiday. And I'm no Juneteenth scholar by means, but I know enough to know that I celebrate it every year. My family, we celebrate it every year intentionally because, again, for me, a lot of traditions are lost, in this country. And, for those of us that are starting new ones, we need to start somewhere. And a lot of that sometimes is just a lack of our history and, in terms of lack of culture, if you will. And so that's been important for me for the last decade, trying to find a way to make things like that stick. So Juneteenth, fellas, let's talk about it. Who has a clear definition for the people as to, what it is and what it's meant to you?
Oh man, very. I don't know. Shortly, succinctly, we'll say June 19th was when former slaves were notified that they were freed. They had been freed. It happened previous or prior to that, but the news didn't get to the slaves at that time until June 19th. So that became the African American Emancipation Day. Not well after, but a little bit after the Emancipation Proclamation. We celebrate when we found out. Basically, is what happened. And that's what June 19th is. We found out June 19th.
About it.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm no scholar on it either. But I think that's important. Who's the scholar on this? And how come I haven't been exposed to those scholars yet? And how come I had to Google it to really figure out what it was about? Because we heard about it. And I've gone to barbecues year after year, and people say the same thing. This is the day we found out. But why did it take long? See, I ask questions like that. Why did it take so long? What were those systems in place? And you get those answers in your head. Like, of course, it would take long for me to get that information because there's pressure to not, right? There's pressure to keep the status quo. And the status quo at the time were forced labor. I'm not going to tell the forced labor that they've been free if I don't have to. Nobody's going to enforce that. So once we found out we turned up.
Pretty much. I mean, and just going piggybacking off that. I mean, I think the fact of not finding out until later is been our reality since our stay in America. I mean, honestly, from that day forward, like it is constantly an experience of finding out later or being past it later or getting the hand me down of, and trying to make it work. And so while it's marvelous, to have found this information out and to commemorate that day, I think even that still marks the sting of what we have to navigate through, right? Of kind of getting things later, right? In and making it work, right? And I think once again, it speaks back to which we talked about before, our resiliency as a people, right? And that while it may have come later, we made the most out of it. When we found out, when we get it, we make the most of what we have and make it work for us. We don't have to allow, even though we find out later, because I don't want to sit in the negative perspective of it, to limit our ability or ingenuity or our landscape of freedom, if you will,
Mhm.
to be able to advance in such liberties, right? And create a new lane now, right? And create a space that and how to flip that space. I mean, imagining from hearing that as a slave that you're free now, that there has to be an evolution that has to happen now, right? Because your whole entire mentality was slavery, right? Your livelihood now is survival and slavery, and now you're free. Now, just because you are free doesn't mean that everyone in everyone else's mind they're going to treat you as free, right? So then there's layers and things to work through and to wade through. And so, moving fast forward into today, I think we can learn a lot, from looking back and how they had to navigate the waters and how we still have to navigate the waters in which we're navigating to today. And honestly, we're going to be honest, it's not that long ago, right? So we can't expect it all to be clear water now and sunshine. There's still some murkiness in the water, and there's still some practice of wading through and working through and resiliency that's needed to continue to advance as a people.
Let me say this. I just think it's been customary since 1865 for us to be on the delay about anything in this country. And that's not taboo, that's reality. I think though in 1865, even though that they may have found out delayed or later, it was still something to celebrate that they could literally walk off the plantation if they choose to. And we know a lot of folks actually, stayed, in indentured servitude or worked on the plantation just to provide a living for themselves and et cetera. But as you stated, actually, this wasn't a long time ago. And so I would think the mindset would be to just psychologically know that you're not mentally, physically in change, but possibly still mentally in change, right? Because what are you going to? You know, this is where you've been or your family's been for a couple of generations. And that's a couple of generations in deficit. That's a couple of generations with deficiencies. Although there's light there, because again, now you can go make your own if you had the tenacity and fortitude to go out there and build something. But it's, as you've stated, it's always still been murky water. Just to knowing that in Texas at that time, where it was started, that information not being passed down or told, because I'm sure people knew. Master knew. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
yeah, they knew. It's just, you find out when you find out, because I'm about to get this labor done. You know,
Yeah.
but I think we're here today to celebrate the fact that we have it. And although, like you stated, Curtis, like we're still finding out in waves and delayed. I think that comes from just systematic, like America's independence has outshadowed any other independence, because again, America sees itself as one man, in terms of this is the good way, this is the right way. The July 4th Independence Day is what it is. That's what we're going to acknowledge and recognize, and everybody else get with it. And
I
we're
think we breaking out of that though.
yeah.
I
I was
think
getting ready to say that.
in the
I was getting ready to
last
say that. Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was
No,
going
you're
to say
waiting.
we
Go
are breaking
ahead.
out of that. Even if we have the delays coming, like I said, I got on Juneteenth really hard about 5 years ago. My sister and I, she was just like, yeah, I'm about to have a Juneteenth celebration. I'm like, okay. And she really got into it with like really setting it up communal wise and, just rhythm, tunes, drums, things of that nature. Had some African dancers come through to really kind of give the younger generations an opportunity to see some of the stuff that has really kind of passed down, even non-directly to us, some knowledge base of where the origins come from and what it might have looked like. And I jumped on the bandwagon. I'm like, you know what? We have so many lost traditions, in a lot of families. Like, we need to start focusing on the things that we can rebuild, not so much of what we lost, but where can we start? And for me, it was the best thing, because even more so than Independence Day in this country, like, to the knowledge base of having having physical freedom, even if the psychological part wasn't there, meant something, because we were not viewed legally as property. And I think that piece right there, regardless of how whoever catches it, right, in terms of knowing about this holiday, I think that's the point we got to go back to. Like, we were not physically deemed property legally anymore.
Mm-hmm. That's really good. And they think about that, and I never thought about it like this until right now. But that's why I'm grateful for these platforms, because it brings us to a space back of awareness and remembrance. But to think about the fact that what you said was very profound, and I'm just having a moment of reflecting on that, but understanding that that understanding coming before civil rights, before the marches, before we had any voice to do any of that, the fact that that voice of someone making that decision before we had a voice to speak for ourselves, that says a lot, right? And I know sometimes can we take a moment and give people who don't, may not have our pigmentation some kind of credit, right? Because sometimes we do, this disservice, and separate and say, they just don't understand our struggle. But the fact that voices were rising on our behalf even before we could, right? And so the fact that some kind of way, someone thought the fact that this needs to change, right? And it brought that sense of change, even with us getting the information late. Thank God that someone, right, began to see a different perspective and brought of help or hand for us to be able to stand up and move into things like social justice, and give us the platform for us to be able to utilize that space and raise our voices. So it's just a sobering thought to think about how that perspective has come, and how this is still being worked in through our country, right? It's something that's still being worked in.
Yeah. I think that's the most important part right there. Like, I grew up celebrating Independence Day, July 4th, as one of the biggest and funnest holidays that I knew as a kid, and families and cookouts and crabs and, you name it, right? We're getting together, school's out, ignorant to the fact that in 1776, there were still slaves. There were still slaves. And as African Americans in this country, we were not freed in terms of being non-property. So in 1776, the Black people in this country were not celebrating that independence from across the pond. You know what I'm saying? Like, they were probably setting up the preparations and the party for those that felt like they won the war while still in servitude. You know what I mean? And I think to think about that in terms of where we've come and where we are today, man, it's powerful, as you said a second ago, like, to really start researching Juneteenth and understanding that this is our birthright to celebrate the fact that, again, we are non-property, because legally we were property in this country. Humans were property. I know, like, I'm a buff for a lot of those antebellum movies and depictions that really go into the narratives about, visualization when it comes to these stories, because, again, I feel like those are my history classes. That's where I'm sitting there going through the emotion of, man, like, I couldn't even imagine being alive, when Black folks were outlawed in North Carolina.
Yeah.
You hear what I'm saying? Black folks were outlawed. Like, it was a law not to be Black in that city or state, or you would be killed.
So they the 12th.
13.
It's 12th, right?
13.
12. Okay, that's cool. Well, it kind of goes into what you were saying, right? Being outlawed. I'm gonna jump into a crime real quick, because I don't think we got a whole lot of time. Just real quick. June 12th is known as Loving's Day, and what Loving's Day is the day that interracial marriage was kind of made legal. some a folk out in, I believe it was North Carolina. Their last name was Loving. Black woman, white man. They're
Virginia,
married.
Virginia.
Virginia, actually Virginia. That's right. Yeah, Virginia. Looking at you and thinking Carolina. So anyway, yeah, they're all married, and cops bust into their house and arrest them and say, you know what, y'all not married here, so they pretty much got a choice: get out of Virginia, or go to jail. And at the time, they chose to leave, but eventually they came back, and I think the ACLU took their case, and they eventually won, and interracial marriage became legal. But that's part of our history too, just like June 19th is. All of these things kind of intertwine, and when you start looking into the way we get our rights, it's always by challenging some built-in barrier that they put in the legal system. So we have to know kind of where we came from to know how we get these rights, because we can't take it for granted. We have to fight for every single bit, and there's a way we do it, and there's a platform and a format for what we do it, and it's the legal system. So we got to know our history and then know how they had success, so we can use those strategies too.
That's good.
That's all I got.
I'm just hoping that Juneteenth becomes the actual legal calendar holiday. To your point, Curtis, I think that will be something that really shows that we've gotten progressional in this country, like progressively. And just like Independence Day and any other holiday that we have that we get off work and so forth, things of that nature. For me, that's a step in the right direction, to your point of making it legal. Because again, making it legal is the acknowledgement. So for us, if falling on Father's Day sometimes or a holiday on the weekend, we're still picking up steam in that regard. We're still doing what we do to make it matter. But I think that's, in my crumb, for those of you out there who are watching, and Juneteenth is a big thing in you and your family, this has been a big thing for you all, or you don't know anything about it and you want to learn more about it. As Curtis said, I would say just start with research. But I think the more we can find ways to petition to legalize this being a national holiday will be a great start to showing what equality could look like, just in terms of awareness. I won't say fairness. We won't play that card game right now, but I say just an awareness of acknowledging, again, those deficits that did occur, to showcase that we're moving in the right direction about making things better. I wouldn't even say correcting things. I said making it better, because today is where we are. And the generation even behind us, like, I just want them to know the whys and what is, so that they continue to celebrate and honor it and pass it along to their generations, because it is our history, and it's real. We can't get away from it. And so more research, more knowledge, more actionable steps towards, legalizing this as a national holiday in terms of Juneteenth, because I still feel delayed, even though I've been going hard for 5 or 6 years. I still feel delayed as to, I wish I knew sooner, so that I could have really be gung-ho about, finding out where the action marches are, so we can get this on the calendar, because it's just that personal as to, wow, because of that, I'm no longer property.
Yeah, that's good. I think if anything, I will leave and that I take away, honestly, when I begin to think about and diving deeper into Juneteenth, is make moments matter, right? Make moments matter. Like, again, as you said, as we said before, finding out the information of your real emancipation. Even if you found out later, what I'm grateful for is they made moments matter, right? They could have chosen to wallow in the fact that they're just getting this information, or they could have been scared and never left, right? But thank God for the bravery of our ancestors who decided to leave a bad situation and plunge into the dark and deep, and did not know how or what they're going in toward, or how to make it work, even now in a system that's still pinned against them, but made it work. And so now, out of nothing, they created something so that we have a space to stand and have strength. So if anything I learned from that is make moments matter, right? And so no matter where you may feel like our ancestors, that things are getting to you late, or our system is rigged against you, and you don't get the same education or same information and the same song that we've sung for years, but make it matter, right? Make moments matter. You can take anything that is handed to you and you can use it. If you use it, it will work for you. And that's what I learned from that. And so I think that's what we should take from that.
I totally agree, man. And I think for me, I'm all about learning the past to understand it, to create and adopt the type of depth you need to still survive this world, but also start from where you are. knowledge is free. And incorporating that knowledge into your space, your environments, into your lineage is essential for these type of things to have an awakening every day. It's never too late, actually. So if you are not knowledgeable about Juneteenth, do more research, get more connected to our emancipation from being property in this country and transitioning into human, literally, a couple hundred years ago. Let's put that back in perspective, and taking that information and doing something with it. Again, just starting with acknowledging the fact that you should celebrate your right to humanity first, and then celebrate community. Find your pod, your hub, your family. If your family don't celebrate it, be the first person that brings it to the table. All right. Get the cornbread and macaroni and chicken going. Ask someone to cook, come together and say, we just want to acknowledge today, because there was a moment that happened in our history that we went from property to humanity, and we can't forget that. And we need to know that based on where we still have left to go. So I want to leave and close out tonight with that. Thank everybody for tuning in again to another episode of CornbreaD. Again, follow us at Eat More CornbreaD on Instagram and Facebook, and check us out at eatmorecornbread.com. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Peace.
Peace.